your life will do what she must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily.
Hello everybody and welcome to Women's Spaces. My name is Elaine Holtz and I'm your host. And as always, I am just thrilled about today's guest. I have a wonderful woman with me by the name of Erin Carlstrom, who just happens to be running for Santa Rosa City Council for the election of 2012. And just an amazing young woman and an amazing story. But before we get into the interview, I have a few comments I'd like to make. The first thing is I'd like to show a picture. This is of our sisters of many, many years ago. This picture was taken, if you can imagine, in 1872. I mean, 1872. My God, that's over 100 years ago. And when you think about it, when you look at it, these are some pretty powerful women. And what they're saying is no self-respecting woman should listen or work for the success of a party that ignores her sex. And you know, it's really amazing when you think about it, what these women accomplished. But the most important thing to recognize and to think about is it took us 100 years to get the vote. And you know something, it wasn't that easy, and people were not that excited that, oh, women are going to vote, as if we can't think, only our husbands can make decisions for us. And the reason I bring this up is because I got some disturbing statistics. We just had a primary, and you know, we live in a democracy, and voting is so important. I mean, we have some wonderful women running for city council, and you know, if women stay home and don't vote, these women don't have the same chance they have if you cast your vote. And you know, people, when they tell me they don't vote, they say, oh, my vote doesn't count. Well, I got news for you. Your vote doesn't count when you don't vote. I mean, think about that. It does not count when you don't vote. And the statistics that I ran into was really, really interesting to me. We have 248,216 registered voters. In the primary, only 115,563 people actually went to the polls or turned in an absentee ballot. And you know, 115,863 might sound like a lot to you, but you know something? That's only 48.7% of registered voters here in Santa Rosa. We didn't even hit the 50% mark. I mean, come on, we live in a democracy, and a democracy depends on people getting out and casting their ballot. It's really important. And when you don't vote, what you're saying is you don't care. You don't care what happens with the environment. You don't care what happens with the schools. You don't care if there's a war or not a war. You don't care if we have health care. You just don't care. When you stay home and you don't vote and you think you're protesting, you're actually saying that you don't care. So I have a simple suggestion for you. Number one, try to get involved. Read as much literature as you can so at least you make an intelligent decision. But secondly, really, that's really important, is make sure you go to the polls and vote. Don't stay home. And if you feel that you can't vote for a Democrat or a Republican, well, vote for an alternative party. But make your voice known. Make your vote known. Especially if you're protesting. If that's the way you protest, by staying home, I recommend voting for an alternative party. At least they'll have some numbers, and maybe you can hear a little bit more intelligence being presented instead of all this back and forth, you know, oh, he did this, she did that, she's no good. I mean, it's enough to drive you crazy. Instead of talking about education for our children or ending the war or getting ourselves a good health care system, we're just talking nonsense. So think about that. And just for my women viewers, because I'm really, really touched by this picture. These were the women before us. And listen, in those days, you know, we're really lucky. We can speak out. But back then, oh my goodness, if a woman opened her mouth, oh, forget about it. Or if she ever dared to wear pants, forget about it. I mean, we've come a long way. We really have. And the way we're going to stay and the way that we're going to keep what we've gained is to make sure we get out there and vote, and make sure that we vote for a lot of the women that are running, because we've got some great, great women in this community running. Well, anyway, that's a lot to think about, and that's the whole idea of women's spaces, is that we all start thinking. I know it's hard, sometimes it's a stretch. I know sometimes I think too much, and I'm sure my viewers out there could identify with that one. Well, anyway, without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest, Erin Carlstrom. Erin, welcome to Women's Spaces.
Thank you, Elaine. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, it's just so exciting. Here you are, a young woman like yourself. I want to tell my viewers a little bit about you. Erin is a local person here, born in Santa Rosa, in this area.
Actually, no. I grew up in San Bernardino County.
In San Bernardino?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But when did you move to Santa Rosa?
In 2008, right before the first election for Barack Obama.
Oh, boy. So welcome. So you're a newcomer to our area. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Erin. Erin earned her BA in political science from Yale. That's very impressive to me. One of the things, whenever I hear Yale or Stanford, I know it's been a struggle, and you really have to have it up here before you can get in. And she got her law degree from Pepperdine University, which is another prestigious school. And prior to law school, she was a 4-time NCAA All-American athlete, and her specialty, I believe, was swimming.
That's correct.
And Erin lives in downtown Santa Rosa now with her husband, Nick. Well, welcome to Women's Spaces.
Thank you, Elaine. Happy to be here.
Well, what how I like to start the show out is that tell us, I've told a little bit about your background, but here you're born in San Bernardino. Tell us a little bit about yourself, anything that you feel comfortable talking about.
Sure. As I mentioned, born in San Bernardino County in Redlands. To my mother and my father, and I grew up in a household where my mom was a Democrat and my father a Republican, so you can imagine that the conversations at home were always very lively. Neither of my parents when I was born were college graduates, so they always really emphasized to me the importance of getting just the best education that I could have. Working hard all the way through high school. I went to public high school. I was a swimmer. And, my parents worked so very, very hard to make sure that I had every opportunity available to me. And so I was lucky enough to go to Yale University and studied political science there. I always knew I wanted to go into government and go into public service. Some of my earliest memories are politically charged. I can recall a candlelight vigil protesting Desert Storm. So I am giving away my age there, but I was a young child when we protested that. And then again in college, I had the opportunity to participate in a program called New American Freedom Summer, which was modeled after the Freedom Riders of the Civil Rights era. Only in this instance, our program gave us the opportunity to encourage voter registration and governmental participation by Latino residents in Arizona. And in addition to that sort of government and political bent, we had the opportunity to go and do humanitarian efforts in the Sonoran Desert for folks making or attempting to cross those hundreds of miles of barren desert and come to America for the opportunities here. And really, I had the opportunity for the first time to experience how a shift in who was in charge really impacts those humanitarian efforts. And it was really that experience that pushed me over the edge going into government.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because what's pushed me over the edge, and I almost feel ashamed of it. I've never recognized how important local elections are, how many decisions are made on a local level, and how important it is in a democracy that we get involved. And it sounds like you've really been involved. Well, one of the things that I'd like to talk a little bit about before we get into your running for Santa Rosa City Council is, as a woman, how did you get the confidence, and also going to Yale? What were some of your challenges, especially picking political science, which is not something that women typically go into?
Absolutely. Being a woman was definitely an interesting experience at Yale. Women have only been allowed to attend Yale for just over the last 50 years. Prior to that, it was an all-men's school. And so, I was lucky enough not to be one of the first few generations to have to deal with the initial sexism and gender discrimination. But it was definitely interesting to experience some of the lingering vestiges of that sexism. For example, when I was a senior, served on the Yale College Council and spent my time on the council working on an initiative to streamline Yale's rape and sexual assault reporting and response systems, and spent a good year and a half making sure, as I witnessed a number of very close friends being assaulted by fellow students, and having the opportunity to work to make that a better experience for people who've just undergone a horrific challenge to their life. It was rewarding, but definitely challenging.
So where do you get your, I love the word chutzpah. Where do you get that, your personality comes out so strong. Where do you get your confidence?
I like to think I got it from my parents. My mother is a very, very strong woman, and my father a very, very supportive man. And between the two, the combination has, I'm grateful to say, turned me into what I am. And then I also think because I did take advantage of those opportunities that were presented to me to move 3,000 miles away to go to college. I actually landed in New Haven 2 weeks before the September 11 attacks. So as a brand new college freshman, 3,000 miles away from home, we could see the smoke coming up the Long Island Sound.
Wow.
As those horrific attacks occurred.
Boy, that must have been some experience. Oh,
Absolutely.
My goodness. Well, let's start coming up to date. So what motivated you to move up from San Bernardino up to Santa Rosa?
Well, I had actually come back to California to go to law school. As you pointed out, I went to Pepperdine and spent some time at the beach. I always joke, although there's not a lot of beach time when you're in law school. I actually studied for and took the bar in Oakland, and then moved on up to Santa Rosa just as soon as I could. I had been attracted by the type of community here, the combination of the wonderful neighborhoods and business environment with the agricultural and open space protection. That was really what drew me here.
Well, tell us some of the involvement. I mean, you came into town. One of the things that women's spaces try to do is try to encourage, women to get off their duff, do something for the community, do something for peace. Why don't you tell us a little bit, how did you come into a new community, you have your law degree, how were you able to get involved? I mean, what were some of the first steps you took?
Well, as I said earlier, it was right before the election in 2008, so I am of one political party's persuasion, and I looked around to find where others were, where other organizations were. I knew there would be debate watch parties and election night parties, so I wanted to just touch base with like-minded people. Soon after the election, I took myself to an election and ran for a delegate in that party to our state party. I wasn't successful, but that is where I met my current husband. And the rest, as they say, is sort of history. I was quickly introduced to the youth branch of the party here locally, where I've had the opportunity to serve both on the county, state, and now national levels. And had the opportunity to work first on the Planning Commission for the city. I was appointed by Veronica Jacoby. And then now I serve on the Measure O Oversight Committee, which is the Public Safety and Gang Prevention quarter-cent sales tax.
Well, that's really interesting. Last year I was involved when they had that SWAT team there. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
But I understand they're not doing it this year.
No, they're not.
Well, it shows, people, right now we're in the throes of getting district elections, and we've just got it voted by the city council to get it on the ballot. The SWAT team will not be there, and it shows the value of community. And as I was reading your resume, I know that you were involved with the Planning Commission. Can you give us a little insight? Well, how did that kind of prepare you for what you're doing right now?
I think it greatly prepared me. In the time that I was on the Planning Commission, we reviewed a number of very large projects, and without getting too far into the weeds here, the job of the Planning Commission and me as a commissioner was to take a look at the project, to read the applicable zoning and general plan codes, and to make sure that the project fit within it. It sounds very dry, but I found it incredibly invigorating, talking with the applicant, speaking to the neighbors who were going to be impacted, learning about how this project may or may not be affecting our waterways, our air, other natural resources. and finding a way to balance, whether the project fits within the zoning and how it's going to impact, and finding a way to explain to people, this is how I feel, please tell me how you feel, and let's find a way to work together.
Well, it's really interesting. One of the things that I found out, particularly getting involved with the district elections and some of the things we've been doing, is how intelligent the community really is. That if you give people a chance, I'm really involved right now with the North Bay Organizing Project, which I see a lot of groups coming together. And I noticed that you mentioned that you're very, very strong on neighborhood involvement. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And district elections, just to touch on it briefly, is a great way to allow neighborhoods to have a much closer relationship with their elected official. I've actually been precinct walking for my campaign since February, and there's a lot of the community that I've not yet had the chance to talk to. It's my goal to talk to 20,000 homes before the election, because I think it's really important that our community understand who their representatives are. And district elections would be a great way, will be a great way to ensure that happens. And moving back to the neighborhood involvement, I spent some time in the Railroad Square area of our downtown, living and interacting with the West End Neighborhood Association, and it is fascinating the marvelous work that our neighborhood associations do. They put on community events, they engage folks in the activities of our city, and I think it's wonderful that we have the opportunity to allow them to have a greater say in how the city is run.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I really couldn't. It's really interesting. And again, it's people getting involved, because that's what democracy is all about. I always love to look at our Constitution, because it starts out with we the people. So without the we in it, and having just everybody just making decisions for us, I think what happens is I think people get lazy. They think we're just going to elect somebody and they're going to take care of it. They don't realize that you have to stay involved. You have to stay participating. I mean, it's really a very powerful thought when you start thinking about it. Well, one of the questions I always ask my guests to send me one or two questions, and one of the questions that you wanted to talk about, it said that Santa Rosa, and it seems like the nation, has a very polarized political environment. What do you mean by polarized? How do you see that in Santa Rosa?
Well, I think when it comes right down to it, we believe that there is a business interest and there's an environmental interest, and that those two factions are at war with one another behind the dais on the city council. And I get asked quite often, are you from the environmental or are you from the business interest? And I say yes.
Oh, to both.
It's my perspective. I'm an attorney. I own a small business here in Santa Rosa, and I work with small and our local businesses here in town. And one of the main things that I hope to accomplish is finding new ways to support those local businesses and encourage new businesses to locate here in Santa Rosa. But I also work in the community. As I mentioned before, I was a swimmer all the way through college, and I swim again with the Santa Rosa Masters team. And every day I go to the Ridgeway pool, and it breaks my heart because they have a fundraising thermometer there at the front desk, because the funding for parks, pools, and other community resources has been cut due to the budget considerations. And it's my firm belief that Santa Rosa is a wonderful place because we have a thriving business community and because we have a wonderful protection of the resources that the community has, our open spaces and the services that we provide to our residents. And without one, we cannot have the other. And that will be the main crux of what I'll do on the council.
I think that's so important, that working together, the business and environment. I want to throw something in. I was very upset when they brought in the Chick-fil-A facility across the street from the high school. And what upset me is because I had just seen a movie about obesity with children and how these soft drinks, because you can buy one, you can get a cup and you can fill it up 100 times, all the sugar that's in it. So I was talking to somebody and I asked them, I said, if we have to bring in companies like that, why can't we encourage them to use our local produce? Our local people, we have, for example, organic chickens in Petaluma. Why can't they be buying the chickens? And the answer I got was, we can't tell the corporates what to do. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, if we're letting them into our county, Why can't we make these suggestions? I mean, it's just interesting to me, and it seems to me if you have an environmental person who also has a business background and understands certain things, that you might get a little bit more done. I mean, would you agree or disagree with that?
I would definitely agree. I think Santa Rosa is a wonderful, wonderful place, and businesses and people are going to continue to want to locate here. And it's incumbent upon the decision makers to make decisions that are in the interest of the entire community. That's one of the reasons the state imposes, for example, CEQA, environmental review on projects of a certain size. And I think it's one of the reasons that we have a planning commission and a design review board, and then the city council that review applicants and the projects that they want to locate within our city borders. I think we need to be finding ways to work with them to benefit the whole community.
Well, then let's kind of end the segment and go over how, government clearly plays a role in every person's life, and how do you believe that the city can best, serve the average person and get them involved? What are some of your ideas?
Well, first of all is, of course, neighborhood engagement and neighborhood involvement. We do have a mechanism for projects to be heard and vetted and argued about and have questions asked of them prior to their approval at the city council levels. I think that's a wonderful way for the city to be for the neighborhoods and the residents to be involved. But I do think we need to be doing more to encourage people and engage them in those conversations. And that will be one of my goals, certainly as a former resident of the West End neighborhood, and now currently I'm in the historic Ridgeway district. Those neighborhoods offer so much by way of, the neighbors know what fits best within their community, and allowing them to have that input is a great way to keep Santa Rosa a wonderful place.
Well, you've said some marvelous, marvelous things, Erin, and I really, really appreciate it. And congratulations on the courage and taking the time and all the other things that you're doing to be able to run for office to serve us in the city. Time goes by very quickly when you're having fun. And so what I like to do is I like to have my guests just look at this camera, and anything that you feel you'd like to say to our viewing audience, this is Women's Spaces, anything that you feel comfortable saying, just please be my guest.
Well, I want to thank all of the viewers out there taking the time to educate and engage themselves in our political process, our public process. It is so incredibly important to vote, to get out there, especially at your local level. They say all politics is local, and we've been here discussing one of our local races, and I'm honored to be one of the candidates for that race. It would be my privilege to earn your support and your vote in November. As we're here on Women's Spaces, I'll throw a little plug in for women running for office. More than almost 100 years now, we've had the right to vote, but we still are at critically low levels of women running and holding elected office. So please consider voting for a woman, and consider voting for me. Thank you.
Well, I couldn't have said it any better, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on Women's Spaces, and I want to wish you all the luck in the world with your campaign.
Thank you,
and
Elaine.
If there's anything else that we can do for you, just please feel free to let us know. And to my viewers, wow, what a great interview. I'm telling you, it is just amazing. I really believe the more women we have in office like Erin, the better off we're all going to be, because there's a consideration there that oftentimes you don't hear. Women tend to be more for the neighborhood. They tend to be more for the children. They tend to be more for the future. I'm not saying that men are bad boys out there. Don't get me wrong. But I think that we need a little bit more balance. And I think when you have the female and the male energy working together, I think it's a lot more positive. It really balances out. Like Erin said, you have to have the business and the environment. You have to work together. It's the same thing with male and female. And like I do at the end of my show, I always try to encourage, particularly my women viewers, to get off your duff and do something for peace, do something for the children. This show is going to air sometime in September, I believe. And we just had here in July this horrible, horrible shooting in Colorado, and my heart, my my good wishes go out to all the families that are affected. I mean, what a horrible, horrible thing. But what is happening is our communities are so frustrated. Our young people are so frustrated. You know, we all have to take responsibility even for that young man. How did he get all those weapons? What is the city doing? What are the local governments doing? We need to pay attention to these things. And as I do at the end of every show, I try to encourage, particularly again, my women viewers, do something. Get off your duff. Do something. The very least you could do is write your congressmen, write your senators, write your local people, write the President of the United States, write a letter to the editor, and ask for one consideration, and that is before they take that important vote or they write that important bill, they ask one question, and that is it good for the children? If it's not good for the children, let's not do it. Because if it's not good for the children, it's not good for the future. And I want a future for our children. I have 2 grandchildren. That's part of the reason I do this show. I feel responsible that I help bring another generation in. And when I leave, I want to make sure that there's at least something left behind that is for their betterment and for their lives. You know, just like my mother and my father tried to leave something behind for me. Well, there's a lot to think about, and again, I want to encourage everybody to get out and vote. It's a very important election, and pay attention to your local people. Really, sit down, visit them. A lot of them are going to be coming to your doors. Find out about them, read about them. These are the people that determine what is happening in our communities. They are very important. You know, I look at it local, state, federal. But the local is really, really important. I mean, just look around, you can see all the decisions, and some of the decisions we don't like. And I ask people, if you don't like it, who'd you vote for? You know, it's very, very interesting. Voting is important. For 1 minute, don't think it isn't. And don't think your vote doesn't count, because like I said at the beginning of the show, your vote does not count if you don't vote. Anyway, this is Elaine Holtz with Women's Spaces saying thank you so much for watching, and I will see you the next time.
The woman in your life who will do what she must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily. She knows everything you do because the woman in your life is you. The woman in your life knows simply what is true. She knows a simple way to touch to make you whole now. The woman in your life, she can touch